Welcome to this early November service. I am Elder Ingrid Hoffmann, recording on the lands and waters of the Gimoy Wallabora Yidinji, the traditional custodians of Cairns and surrounding districts. Gimoy is the traditional place name for Cairns, and it's also the name of the slippery blue fig or quandong that once grew in large numbers in this area, a staple food of the cassowary bird too. November, where has the year gone? Perhaps my perception of time flying is influenced by how much I've experienced. For a 7-year-old, a week is a big portion of their life. For a 70-plus-year-old, a week is a much smaller chunk of time, which probably adds to the feeling that months quickly vanish. So, how to value moments of time in serenity is the theme of the second half of this short contemplation. But then first, a background note from my November introduction to Templar Talk when I drew on Templar publications to spark my own ideas. There is a pre-recorded hymn in the middle, some images to think about in a brief slideshow, a short video, and a prayer at the end. Creative thinking was highlighted in that article I mentioned, and I praised the ability of Templars to summon this skill to compose our regular written contributions and to make major decisions needed for positive community development. TSA's annual general meeting last Sunday was certainly a fine example of constructive collective decisions being made and being reached in a well-conducted open forum. That dramatic moment in early Templar history, translated by Doris Frank, called The Rift, was published in the most recent Templar Reflections, Young Ideas, and it illustrated how a creative solution was won in the grip of what Doris described as, quote, the restructuring of the Temple society after a more or less openly fought power struggle between the founders and leaders of the society, Ingrid Hoffmann and Georg David Hardegg. Early Templars then dispensed with the complicated ideas stuck in an opposing battle of wills to reform the spiritual and practical guidance that was needed and that was to be so much more constructive from then on. In today's contemplation, I hope you are happy to explore with me the choice of simplicity for spiritual clarity versus elaborate and over-embellished religious ideas. A parallel example is the contrast between ornament or excessive detail and minimalism in Western art. Cutting through to simplicity is what I suspect we mostly crave in our lives, full of distractions, interruptions, and the lure of busyness, which also often blocks the inner quiet space we seek. This 21st century sees a largely secular Western world. Over the last years of TSA elders redefining who we are in our modern place, we chiefly found in the research that Australians are keen to describe themselves as spiritual but not religious. Words in the Bible, whether poetic past translations or stripped back 20th century versions, can be distant, not easy to relate to, and frankly, so antiquated in some of the customs they describe as to be quite alienating. I have to be honest in saying I found this to be so with the designated reading for today about excuses people made for not following Jesus, Luke 9, 57 to 62. Not that I'm against following Jesus' teachings overall, quite the opposite. As Templars, our spiritual explorations gravitate to the moral and compassionate messages that are distilled in the New Testament. and without having to take on the antiquated customs of the late Roman Empire. We may also find parallels in other traditions, for example, the contemplation-centered traditions of Buddhism, or in my case, the creation-centered worldview of my favorite 12th century mystic, yes, Hildegard of Bingen, who was convinced that nature is the place of the divine. As you know, and as our website puts it, Templars have no dogmas or creeds. We follow a simple statement of our faith that is anchored in the teachings of Jesus and that encourages individuals to explore their own relationship with God. We recognize that everyone has something of the divine within. So we strive to create an open and welcoming environment for self-discovery. Let's pause now for hymn number 21. Thank you for giving me the morning, which doesn't entirely relate to what I'm saying today, but I like it and hope you do too. Recapping. I noted the freedom we have for individuality and a diversity of religious ideas and perspectives. But does that make us spiritually lazy? I think not. Rather, it takes work. And because of the absence of shared community beliefs on an inner level, a sense of cohesion and belonging may be at risk. This is, after all, what conservative Christian churches do have, shared creeds. But Templars hold general values in common, social values of care and compassion for sure, and openness and to exploration and experimentation in faith, along with a contemplative understanding of spirituality. In the Templar case, a cohesive community has remained over turbulent times in our history, and that took hard inner and external work. The work we do is to think deeply, to challenge accepted ideas as we search for the truth. I provoke myself to rethink the way I live and interact with the world, which can be a very challenging space in one's head. Progressive Christianity can feel unstable for many people who come from a conservative Christian background, and it's hard to define beyond someone who wants to follow Jesus' moral teachings and is interested in exploring questions of faith in their lives. If you talk to one progressive Christian, you're only hearing one progressive Christian's perspective without an overall definition. This is as it is for Templars. We engage a personal spirituality rather than a set religious system. We seek, explore, and we learn. And without external symbols of creed and dogma, or at least very minimal ones, our outer spaces of contemplation are less emphasized than an inner sacred space. Your sacred space is where you find yourself again and again. So said Joseph Campbell, a deep thinker about universal spirituality, creation mythologies, and humanism. Let's compare elaborately ornamented and cluttered Baroque spaces with minimal ones in these collages and digital photographs. There are 10. It's no great revelation to say we are awash with images in the 21st century, thanks to the ubiquity of smartphones with their cameras and digital pictures. Are images, especially ones that are doctored, more important for communication than words in our culture now? That's something to ponder. The inner work of creating a sacred space can be tricky to uncouple from the sort of cliches of Zen and New Age. It's easier just to move the furniture, unclutter a drawer, and just procrastinate when aiming to create space for the inner workings of our soul, which may arouse feelings of vulnerability or even, what's the point? I think the point is peace and serenity. For unveiling our inner self, the tools needed may be unfamiliar in our culture and may not come naturally or not without practice. Silence, stillness, and solitude are not normally part of a daily repertoire for so many people. But creating and appreciating an inner sacred space invites us to pay attention, nurture and spend time there with ourselves and our spiritual nature, perhaps in prayer. And we may even find we become the temple of the divine within. Inner space is a place of peace, a portable sanctuary where your sense of the divine or God can be experienced separately from the chaos and cares of living. Or there are more formal places for contemplation. In Japan, meditation and contemplative traditions are practiced at temples and shrines. Among Indigenous peoples, respecting country, fellow people, and the spirit of a place are sacred practices. Sacred natural places are found in almost all societies, and these sites are often the only refuges for endangered species and rare ecosystems. They have been preserved for centuries by spiritual observance and strict taboos that are often more effective than traditional conservation methods. Their creation and longevity suggest the power of spirituality in protecting biodiversity. For help in thinking about these themes, I referenced a blog by Jean Wise called Healthy Spirituality and a website called constructivevoices.com. Finally, to revisit uncluttered images, there are photographers who do specialize in contemplative photography. And in this 3.5-minute video, the images and Tibetan flute music of Rinzing Kelsang will, I hope, give us a sense of serene feelings to take back into our daily lives. After that, we end with a secular prayer for peace. A prayer for peace. Describing tranquil times today, may I appreciate inner peace and small moments of grace. May life unfold in a way that fosters tranquility and well-being. May I appreciate the generous respect shown by others. May I reciprocate and gift respect to those I encounter in unexpected moments. Feeling aligned with community and creation, may I consciously tend inner peace. Let me dwell with purpose in moments of harmony, fostering connection with others and the world. Amen. Thank you for watching and listening today. I so appreciate your company. Goodbye.